All right, the midterm elections are 4 weeks from tonight, but most of the key members of President Obama's economic team have already left the administration. And as the economy struggles to recover and businesses sit on cash, many are encouraging the president to hire advisors with business experience. Here's what former General Electric CEO Jack Welch told Bloomberg this morning.
He has to have somebody that understands business, real business, not academics, etc.
Joining us now is Berkeley economics professor Laura Tyson. Professor Tyson serves on the president's Economic Recovery Advisory Board. She also serves on the boards of major corporations, including Eastman Kodak, AT&T, CV Richard Ellis Group, and the list goes on. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Tyson. Let me ask you just to respond, first of all, to that one question. I mean, does the president's administration need to connect itself more closely with someone from the business community?
Well, you know, I've been a member of the President's Economic Recovery Advisory Board for the last 2 years, and there's very excellent business representation on that, and we really talk a lot about business issues. I think that the administration needs to do a wide search for talent, which I'm sure there will. I think there are very talented individuals in the business community who could do the job of the NEC. Historically, the NEC has been headed both by economists and by members of the business community and by people who are both. So I think it's a search for talent, but I will say the PRAB and other ways, there have been major channels of communication and major actions on business issues all through the administration.
But Professor Tyson, I have to say, you know, I've been talking to a bunch of the key players on Wall Street, and they say, you know, the White House hates us. I mean, that to me doesn't sound like a good relationship, and it doesn't sound like they feel like that they're being heard at all. And that's not just the financial community. I think a lot of corporate America feels that way. How do you improve that?
Well, and wealthy Americans.
Well, I think that it's important to point out that where the administration, what kind of situation the administration faced when it came to office. I mean, we had one of the biggest financial crises, not just in our history, but in world history. And we had the financial services sector reeling. It had to be stabilized. And there was widespread agreement on both the left and on the right and throughout the academic community. I know you're talking to a financial economist right before me. There was a widespread agreement on the need for significant regulatory reform that was going to change the rules of the game because the rules had helped lead to the crisis we faced. So I think it was necessary to stabilize and necessary to change the regulation.
Well, although, Professor Tyson, a lot of people will say that President Obama used pretty much all of his political capital on reform of a different kind, not financial reform, that is healthcare reform. And a lot of business leaders will tell you that's where most of the uncertainty comes from for them, especially small businesses.
Well, the argument that I've been making when I hear the uncertainty argument about why business is not creating jobs at the rate that we would hope is that the real problem is actually aggregate demand. We have a 5% hole in the economy, meaning that we're operating at a level which is essentially about 5 or 6% below our capacity. We're short about $1 trillion of spending. And the real issue here, let's face it, is a lack of aggregate demand. And the real problem here is that American households, the driver of demand for so many years in the United States, have lost trillions of dollars of wealth, faced very high unemployment rates. The median household had no income growth at all. In fact, their income fell from the period 2001 to 2008. This is an economy which is suffering from some real shortage of aggregate demand. I don't buy the uncertainty argument as the reason that we have a high unemployment rate.
You mentioned that, though, and you could also say that a lot of households in this country bought homes that were too expensive, they couldn't afford them, spent way too much money on credit cards, basically amassed too much debt, got over-leveraged. Do you disagree with that?
I am not saying that there was not a problem there was over leverage, absolutely. There was insufficient saving, absolutely. Some people would argue, I know some economists who are arguing now, that part of the problem was that households were not gaining anything in terms of real income. All the income growth was going to the very top of the income distribution. Households tried to continue to maintain their living standards by borrowing. They made a mistake, yes. And that is a mistake that it takes a long time to unwind. Americans are doing it. They're cutting back on their debt levels. They're cutting back on their credit cards. They're increasing their savings. They're doing all the things that need to be done. They're very painful. That slows the economy down a lot because those consumers were providing the bulk of the demand for the economy.
So you need to replace basically that demand. Do you think that the stimulus package, President Obama's stimulus package, did a good job of that? And do you think there needs to be more?
You know, I think that the stimulus package did as well as predicted by the economists. Basically, if you look at the number of jobs that have been created, probably by the end of the year it's going to be somewhere in the order of 3.5 million jobs.
So you think that money was well spent, Professor Tyson? You think that $800 billion was well spent, targeted?
I am going to say that the stimulus, both monetary and fiscal stimulus, brought the economy back from the brink of a Great Depression. And we would have unemployment rates today of 11.5% to 12% or more if we didn't have monetary and fiscal stimulus. Do I think every aspect of the fiscal stimulus package that was passed was perfect? No, of course not. This is a political process. It's a messy political process. It was done in an emergency situation where the economy was essentially in free fall,
right,
and the financial markets were not stabilized. So yes, it has worked. It has worked about as well as expected.
All right, so do we need more then? And if we do, what specifically and how targeted? What do you want to see it targeted at so that it's even more effective than the first go-round?
Right. Well, I am of the school, and it's a school that is not politically has a very loud voice right now. I do believe that we could have embarked on additional fiscal stimulus. I have made the argument clearly that where we should spend that additional stimulus money is in the area of things that not only create demand right now, but create supply and investment and growth in the future. And I focused on infrastructure investment, investment in education, and perhaps some additional tax relief aimed at the business sector to encourage employment. So those would be my areas. If we cannot do that as stimulus policy, and stimulus means, by the way, you do something and you don't pay for it.
Right.
If you can't do it that way, I propose, and I've proposed in writing, all right, take the Bush tax cuts for the top 2%,
right,
let them expire, take the $40 billion next year, and use it on these other things because they create more demand. They are better stimulus measures than leaving the tax cuts in place for the top 2%.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Professor Tyson, thank you so much for joining Matt and me this afternoon. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Laura Tyson there from Berkeley, though, coming to us from a conference in Washington, D.C.